Well, here now is Sean Bailey, the government community and youth engagement champion who was brought up in a single-parent home. In Salford is Sally Whittle, a single mother who writes about her experiences raising her daughter by herself. Sean Bailey, what was the effect of, in your early years, the absence of a male elder figure, a father figure?
I think a father figure is very important, particularly for boys, around regulating their behaviour. Boys are rambunctious. There's issues around violence, how you conduct yourself, and it's hard to take them lessons from your mother because she does not have that experience. We have a proliferation of gang and antisocial behaviour, and a male figure has a very different response mechanism and a very different emotional development path that you lead a child down when you're talking about those issues. For me in particular, I was lucky. I was in the Army Cadets. I had male role models who were different to the boys I grew up with on the street, who helped me regulate my own behaviour. Because why regulation of your behaviour is important, because that determines how well you do in school. Do you learn the social skills that allow you to be successful? Without that, you're sunk before you start.
Sally Whittle, you have a daughter.
I do.
Yeah. Do you think she's deprived by not having a father figure around?
Absolutely not. I think there are two issues here. I think there's the idea that family structure has to include two parents of a different gender. I think family structure is very important to children, but there's no kind of rule as to what genders should be involved. I don't think the addition of a male gender role model would have made any significant difference to the way that my daughter is being brought up. And I think also there's the idea that a male role model for a child has to be their father. I think that as a society and as a family and as a community, we can introduce lots of male role models into children's lives. It doesn't necessarily have to be their father, and that's not going to be available to all children.
Sean, would you like to explain to Sally what it is specifically that a male figure in these sort of situations brings that isn't going to be brought by a woman?
Most girls, ladies, have never had a fight. Excuse me. They've never been threatened in the same way that boys threaten each other. And there's no doubt that there's a gender difference between how boys and girls communicate. It is nice to have someone lead you through that. But more importantly, this isn't so much a discussion only about family structure. And you're right, one of the major role models in my life was my uncle. I have two uncles, Trevor and Dennis, who led me through life, and that's great. But there is a point where there's a wider implication. This will definitely touch on poverty, etc. My two uncles have children of their own. They could not support my mother once they started their own families. And if you want to talk about family structure, male role models, one of the most important things is the direct correlation with poverty. And if you want to bring children out of poverty, which is the single biggest determinant of your future, to add a male role model, a second parent, is vitally important.
You're nodding, Sally Whittle.
I think there's a distinction here to be made between correlation and causation. I think certainly bringing working mums out of poverty is really important, and as a working mum it can be incredibly hard to find high quality flexible childcare, to find flexible work opportunities, to access education and training when you're solely responsible for a child. But I think arguing that the solution to poverty is for women to be in relationships with a husband or with a partner of the opposite gender slightly misses the point. I think really we need to be looking at offering women greater opportunities to support their families if they do find themselves in a single parent situation.
The thing I would add to that, though, no government is in the business or can be in the business of keeping people together, of course. That's just simply not going to happen. But what you could do, the policy instrument here is, you could make it a lot harder for you to financially separate yourself from your children. If I ran the universe, any children you brought into the world, the first port of call for resource for those children would be you, not the government. And what we're building here, and I think what the CSJ are talking about, is how we are trying to wedge our whole society in between into that role. And what we really should be saying to fathers is, you stay, at least financially. That is beyond discussion. And there is no doubt in my mind that a male role model has a significant role to play. And why I concentrate on fathers is because they have a vested interest and a moral duty to stay involved with any children that they father.
But I think you're confusing the father's duty to provide for their children, which certainly you can talk about a moral duty, but in practice, and I can tell you as a single mother who's been through the system, if a father does not want to contribute financially to their child, then that will not happen. And there are no current policies in place that can make that happen if there's an unwilling parent. But I think what you're talking about is role models, and I think what the report from the Centre for Social Justice is talking about is saying that if you're a single mother, then the outcome for your child is necessarily worse because you're a single mother. And I think actually we need to be looking at completely different issues.
This isn't a debate about two-parent families versus single-parent families. It is a fact that if you're a single parent, woman or man, the outcomes for your children are statistically worse, and it's going to be tougher for you. They are facts.
But let's get away from correlation and let's look at causation. Let's look at what causes those problems.
It is a fact. If you look at it the other way, children from two-parent families statistically work out better. That is not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is, where does the burden lie? Where can you ask people to step up? And again, the emotional development of your children is definitely supported by having a man, a role model.
I would certainly say, from my perspective as a single mum and talking to other mums that I know, yes, it's great if you have male role models within the family, and I'm lucky my daughter has a good relationship with her dad. She has uncles, she has cousins, she has lots of men in her life. But I think that broader as a society, we need to look at getting more men involved, because not every single mum has that opportunity. Not every single mum has brothers or has a good relationship with her ex. It may not be helpful to have that involvement.
But it's about a policy by its very nature is general. So you have to try and make things as good as you can generally, and part of that is about the message you send. And if you complain about deadbeat dads, they'll often talk to you about their deadbeat dad. So if you're going to break that cycle, you need to say to people, through policy in some parts, and you're correct that there is no policy vehicle to make people pay up. If I ran the universe, believe me, they would be, and I would take the money. It wouldn't be a debate. I would take the money and give it to the child, because I think that sends a message about
Sean,
what
if you were running the universe, would you have more men in primary schools, for example?
Those things become more complicated. Yes, it would be nice to do that, but we have a legal thing that you can't discriminate. And
but that discrimination happens all the time, Sean. I certainly know, talking to dad bloggers in our community, that they are not welcome. We certainly had a dad blogger that I spoke to this week on Twitter who said that he had volunteered to help with an activity at his daughter's school and was told that actually no, that wasn't appropriate because he was a man, and the parents wouldn't feel comfortable. So I think there are broader issues around let's welcome more men into becoming involved with children, and let's not have that default suspicious viewpoint of why does that man want to work with children, why does he want to support children. And I think actually then that may show that this issue of the outcomes of children of single mothers being worse is not to do with the lack of male role models. It's actually to do with the lack of opportunities and the lack of support for single women raising children.
Well, again, there's some truth in that, but I'd add to it that you say it's a correlation between being a single parent and poor financial outcomes, poverty. It's a direct result of that. And one of the ways of getting around that... I
don't think there's sufficient evidence to say that.
One of the ways of getting around that would be to make sure that the father involved was financially connected to the child forever. And I'm going to have to cut you off there. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.